Junior coach Bob Huggins has finally spoken out and given his side of the story, or at least part of it, on a recent radio show slash podcast. Mountaineer Paul and I are going to talk about that and give our opinions on what Hugs had to say right after this word from our sponsor.
This episode of Hoops from the Hills is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory today across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you.
What is up, Mountaineer fans and college hoops fans? My name is Couz.
My name's Mountaineer Paul.
And we present to you
Hoops from the Hills, baby.
what is going on out there, Mountaineer land, college hoops land. We are back with another episode of Hoops from the Hills. And tonight, as we record this, it is night. We're going to kind of discuss Bob Huggins' interview on the Full Court Press radio show. Talk about some of the comments he had to say, and then give our thoughts on those comments. Obviously, the podcast was fairly long. I'm not able to share the audio with you. I will leave a link to it, or we'll try to leave a link to it in the description of the video. But we do have an article from West Virginia's WVU Sports Now, which is done by our good friend Ethan Bach, who kind of gave a few quotes in the article. So we'll just do that. It says, former WVU head coach Bob Huggins joined the Full Court Press radio show on Tuesday, publicly discussing his departure from West Virginia University for the first time. Huggins' coaching tenure at WVU ended on June 16th after resigning from his position following a DUI arrest in Pittsburgh. In the police report, Huggins thought he was in Columbus. Huggins countered to say that the university lied about that part of the incident. That's an absolute lie. I knew exactly where I was. I just didn't know the area. I don't know the streets in Pittsburgh, Huggins said, then going down there and being in the middle of the Taylor Swift concert letting out. Huggins, who won 345 games as WVU's men's basketball coach, addressed his arrest. I felt terrible about it, and I still feel terrible about it. I let down certainly the players, fans, the state of West Virginia. I fully recognize that and take responsibility for that, he said. I didn't really know what to do at that point in time. You go through what you have to go through after that, and I did that. Then I said, I'm going to rehab, so I went to rehab. I did that on my own. No one told me to do that. I went to rehab because I thought that was the right thing to do. That's what I needed to do. I spent a great deal of time in rehab. 24 hours later, Huggins met with his players and staff, resigning from his position. The Basketball Hall of Fame coach did not want to resign. To tell the honest truth, the guy over at the athletic department pretty much convinced my wife that we would lose all our benefits if I didn't resign, which is not true, Huggins said. Huggins wishes he was granted an opportunity to sit down and talk with the athletic department about his situation and apologize. West Virginia University conducted a coaching search after Huggins' resignation and eventually landed on an interim role for Josh Eilert, a longtime staff member with the team. Eilert has taken the keys of the program and coached West Virginia to a season-opening win over Missouri State on Monday. Huggins will continue to join the Full Court Press show throughout the season to discuss basketball. All right, Paul.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, man?
I love Ethan to death, man, but there was a lot. I know you can only fit so many in the article. I thought it was interesting he chose, I guess because it cited the university and called them liars. I guess that was the reason he chose those. There was other quotes in that thing that I thought were just as polarizing, but I get it, not criticizing Ethan. I'm just curious why he chose those specific quotes. But first and foremost, my first thought was, I don't believe him when he says he doesn't know the streets in Pittsburgh. I find that hard to believe. You coached in Morgantown for almost 20 years, an hour away from Pittsburgh, and you don't know the streets in Pittsburgh. Somebody's going to have to explain that to me. I'm not saying you have to know every street, but that he wouldn't know his way around in Pittsburgh is a hard pill for me to swallow. And I hate to be critical of Coach Huggins when he's down and out, but I have to be honest. Um, there was other things that I felt like he did good. He took accountability and all that, which was great. I still don't feel like he took full ownership of it. But he's in a place where he feels like he was kind of duped. And I'll tell you what, whoever that person was that convinced his wife to sign that stuff, if they did dupe her like that and to sign that paperwork, that just takes a scummy person to do something like that. Hopefully, that's not how it went down. But if it did, shame on that person for trying to trick her like that. Trying to remember the interview, off the top of my head and stuff, and there's a lot of things he said in there that I took issue with, as you know. But mostly, I'm proud of him for going to rehab. I'm proud of him for coming out and owning up to a lot of what he did, although I think he's still in some denial about some things. It's a tough situation, because I cried, listening to the interview and everything, because I care about Coach Huggins so much, but at the same time I'm mad at him, and it's like it's a balance and far back. I mean, I've said many times I'm not the person to judge anybody for anything, but having been through what Coach Huggins has gone through on a little bit different way, I kind of know the signs, and when somebody is taking full accountability, kind of in a little bit of denial about sudden things. So I think he's got a ways to go with some of it. He'll probably never accept the fact that he's not the coach, and he'll probably always lament that. But at the end of the day, the worst offense to me is the timing. And we talked about this. This was something you actually brought up that I considered, but not fully until you talked about it. The timing is terrible for all this. You're talking about near literally a day or two after somebody that stood beside you for 17 years, first game, and now you're coming out with this. And we're not talking about Missouri State. We're talking about Coach Huggins now, right? So seems a little bit planned, Couz.
Yeah. And which I actually got into that conversation with some people on X, Twitter, about it. My first instinct about the timing was, he's not. I don't think he's the main host of the show. There's 4 guys on the show counting him, and I'm pretty sure he's not the main guy. The main host. So I'm not sure how much he had to say. I'm not sure how much say he had in the timing. But that being said, he could have very easily said, "Look, guys, this is not the right time for me to discuss this because it might take the attention off of Josh." You know what I mean? He could have done that.
Absolutely. There's no doubt.
Now, I'm going to start my thoughts with this. While I'm listening to this, I'm on Twitter and I put out a tweet that I would like to take. I started to delete it, but I was like, nah, it's been out there too long now. I'll just own it. And I did kind of clarify it with a retweet, but I said that the school owes an explanation or has some questions to answer, something like that. And I shouldn't have put that out there because after a couple of days to think more about it, to listen to other people's opinions, which I like to do, I was wrong. Now, I'm not saying did the school handle everything 100% right? Probably not. There's probably some things they should have done better. They probably should have sat down and had a conversation with him. You know what I mean? Instead of saying, hey, you got 30 minutes to make a decision. But at the same time, I think it would have all led to the same ending anyway. You know what I mean? After what he did 6 weeks prior, there was not a lot they could do at that point. They had to pretty much do what they did. He was already on a zero tolerance policy. He got a DUI in a company vehicle, basically. Now, to talk about the article specifically, here's what I thought was a little odd is that they honed in on the one thing about where he accused him of lying about him not knowing where he was. That is not even really an important piece of this whole conversation.
No.
Who really cares about that? You had a 0.21 blood alcohol level driving a car. That's what's important. And not one time did he address that part of it other than to say, I messed up. And not one time have I ever heard him say, I got behind the wheel intoxicated or whatever. I've never heard him mention those words. And that's a little disappointing to me because as you and I have both said, we love this guy, right? Both of us love Huggins.
Yeah.
But to see him continue down this path of not taking accountability, of, not really, his actions aren't really following his words. Like, he's always talked about how much he loves WVU, the basketball program, and the players, but yet he's continuing to cause a distraction.
Right.
I mean, it just, I don't understand it. Now, in that interview, which wasn't mentioned in this article, Hugs commented that they asked him about the lawsuit that's out there. Well, Hugs claims he never filed a lawsuit and told his lawyers he didn't want to. But yesterday, I was listening. Hoppy Kercheval had a segment on his show about it. He read a statement that came directly from Huggins' attorney threatening litigation.
Right.
So I'm confused. Did Huggins' attorney do that on a whim without Huggins' say? Was it just an empty threat? I don't understand. Something's not adding up here, I guess is my point on their side of this argument. Again, is WVU completely blameless in this as far as the way they handled it? I'm not saying that. But at the end of the day, had Bob Huggins not did what he did, none of this we wouldn't be talking about any of it. It all lays at his feet.
Right.
And instead of focusing on what West Virginia did wrong, he wants to keep talking. I mean, he wants to keep talking about that instead of, hey, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I've never heard him say I'm sorry either.
It's a classic victim's mentality. It's what it is.
Now, maybe he said it to his players and stuff, and I hope he did. But, do it publicly. There's nothing wrong with doing that publicly. I think people would respect it, actually, if he did.
Yeah. And there was a time when I went to rehab because I knew if I didn't, I was going to go to jail. Right. And my heart wasn't in the best place because I did it because of something else other than what and I sometimes I've thought about, he went to rehab. He says he chose to go, but what was his real motive? Was it to be so that he could coach again? I just wonder. I have questions about that, and
yeah, that's fair.
There's no way I'm going to know the answer to it. But in recovery, we talk about it all the time. Unfortunately, the reason most people fail in recovery is because they're doing it for somebody other than themselves. It's the most selfish thing you could ever actually do, in a sense, because it's literally have to be for you. You can't do it for your kids. You can't do it for your parents. You can't do it for anybody else. It has to be for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're doing it for any other reason than that, there's going to be failure at some point, or you're going to have to get the ticket before it's too late. So I don't have any clue. 140 something days clean or sober in his case is amazing. And I'm certainly proud of that. And I don't want to overshadow that at all. He's a true alcoholic from what I understand. And one day sober is a miracle. It truly is for somebody that drank like he did for so long. Got to throw that in there for sure. But a lot of like we said, a lot of the actions and stuff here don't add up. There's still victim mentality being played here. There's still some selfishness, which self-centeredness is at the core of the disease of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, no surprise. You're as big a fish as he's been for as long as he's been a big fish. And it's in a small pond in West Virginia at that. It would be hard not to have some ego, but I would love to see a little more humility. But We can't pick hairs here. At the end of the day, I'm glad
Right.
he's healthy. I'm glad
Yeah.
he's happy. I hope he gets a coaching job again. I'll root for him wherever he goes. Um, but there are some things that he's doing wrong here, and unfortunately, we're gonna have to continue to deal with it every time he does a new episode of this thing.
Yeah. Well, they say they said they wanted to address that in the first show, get it out of the way, and then they plan to talk basketball going forward. Hopefully, that's the case.
Yeah, but just him talking about WVU basketball, it's kind of a distraction, in my opinion, because people can say, even if he doesn't criticize Josh Allen, let's say, they should have done this or that. People can spin that into a criticism of Josh Allen. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
It's just the fact that he's on this show, and I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but it is what it is. It's going to be there's going to be a comparison.
Yeah, I get that. You're not going to stop people from from talking about it.
Yeah.
And the other part of it that kind of floored me was when they were talking about his wife and how he talked about how everything happened so fast. His head was kind of spinning. I'm paraphrasing, but his head was kind of spinning. It happened so fast he didn't really know what to do. He said, I don't remember. He said, I don't remember resigning. Well, you stood up in front of the team and talked to them, and you cleaned out your office. I don't know. How do you not remember resigning if you cleaned out your office? I mean, I don't know, man. I'm confused. And I understand it all came from his wife's account, but according to Hoppy, which he's got some sources that you and I don't have. According to Hoppy, and a lot of this has been put out in writing too, by the way, which we've covered on our show multiple times. We've tried to update you guys on this thing throughout the whole process. So feel free to go back and watch some of our past episodes on it. But according to Hoppy, on the other day, he was talking about how they agreed to use his wife's account because Huggins doesn't use email. So the only email they could use was his wife's. And the school agreed to use it because that's what Hugs asked for, or his attorneys or somebody asked, hey, is it okay to use his wife's email for communication about this matter? And they said yes. So I don't know, man. And now the whole benefits thing is a little odd. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what his benefits were. So it's hard to speak to that. But I do know this. If you resign from a job, it's typically easier to get your benefits than if you're fired. So the way I take that is, okay, if you resign, you get to keep your benefits. If you're fired, you don't. I mean, that's how I look. And so that might be where that's coming in. They might have said, look, if you resign, you get to keep your benefits. I don't know. It's just all a mess. It's a crappy situation all the way around.
When you're as rich as Huggins is, do benefits matter that much? I'm serious question.
Well, yeah, I mean, it still would. Yeah, I think so. I mean, because how once you get accustomed to living a certain way with a certain income, you kind of that becomes your lifestyle. You don't want to lose that.
Yeah, I mean,
it might be a first world problem, but it's it is what it is. That's human nature.
Champagne issue. That's champagne problems.
Yeah, there you go.
Quote Neil Brown.
Yeah,
quote Neil Brown on that one.
Right, but I mean that's just human nature. You don't want to go backwards as far as your lifestyle is concerned, and that's fair. Yeah. I don't fault him for that, but that's another reason you allow people to resign instead of fire them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, he could walk away with dignity and apologize, say I'm sorry, and never talk about it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he would probably go down in history, and he will anyway. But now it's going to take a lot longer, probably. I mean, he could be a hero, man. He could be honored at the games. He could be all kinds of stuff. And
Bob Knight was about 65 years old, something like that, whenever all that stuff happened in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 81 when he came back. He or 79 or whatever it was. He died. He came back in 2020.
Yeah.
3 years later, he passed away. Bob Huggins, 70 years old. 10 years from now, let's say these things have gotten better. He's 80 years old. Do you really want to spend only they're asked, maybe who knows how much longer he'll live. I mean, hopefully he lives to be 100. But um, you just I would love to see him fall back into that role somehow that we all talked about. Even if it takes a couple of years.
Yeah.
Don't want it to take as long as it did for Bob Knight.
Right. Well, and the fact that Huggins is coming to games and stuff tells me that he, maybe it won't be that way with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. And maybe once, Gordon Gee's going to be retiring in a couple of years. Maybe when he retires, that helps things a little bit. Eases
Right.
the tensions a little bit. I don't know. Again, I don't know the relationship between he and Rim Baker. But that being said, I just, to put a bow on this thing and wrap it up, I wish Bob Huggins the best. I'm like you. I'm glad he went to rehab. I'm glad he's healthy. I'm glad he's doing well. I hope his radio show podcast, whatever it is, I hope it takes off and does well for him. I hope he gets back into coaching again at some point. I just don't think it'll be at West Virginia, and it probably shouldn't be at West Virginia, because I just think they need to move on from this, start a new chapter, and look to the future.
Well said, man.
Any last words you want to get in before we sign off?
Well, I don't think I can say much better than what you just did. I know I came off critical of Coach Hugs, but keep in mind, guys, I'm coming at this from a person in recovery's point of view. And whenever I listen to Coach Hugs talk, I'm looking for little telltale signs. And I've been open on all my shows. I've been to 12 different rehab facilities. It took me a long time to get clean for multiple years. So I never really know what it looks like when somebody is on shaky ground, or maybe playing a victim card, or just whatever it may be. And maybe I'm overly critical, but those are things I'm listening for, because I put it in recovery first. But I don't want anybody to think I hate Coach Hugs or anything like that. I just, am worried about him. So I'm listening for that kind of thing first and foremost, before the job, before the coaching, before anything. So
right.
It's just kind of in my DNA at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love your perspective on this, because you have a unique perspective that I don't have. And it's great to hear that side of it. But
right.
Anyway, guys, you saw the banners up as Paul was talking. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Paul and I don't always ask for that early in the show like we probably should, but I trust that you guys know to do that. So please hit the thumbs up button. We're trying to get this channel to grow, and obviously we'll be putting up more and more content as we get, now that basketball season is here. We'll be doing more shows, hopefully, and bringing you guys previews, reviews, and all that stuff. So, especially once we get into conference play and some of these bigger games against Power 5 opponents. Well, that said, guys, we thank you for tuning in here. We appreciate your support, and we're out.